Put in the chat box, how are you doing and what are you doing after this class today? Hopefully something fun.
I have a catering job today, so
Oh,
I'm almost done though. I just don't think you guys want to watch me make
how are
cheese
you
spread.
doing and what are you doing after this class? Oop, I didn't mean to, that just was a thing. Sorry, you have a catering job today?
Yeah, but I'm almost done. I've been up since 5 this morning.
You're a hard worker, I'll tell you that. I used to run PMP classes on the weekends, but I think I've like out-aged myself from that. I get tired now. Oh, there's Camietta. Awesome. All righty. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, hanging out with family. I love that. So I was telling my husband, I said, today after class, I absolutely want to like go somewhere because I've been home all week working and I was like, I'm going stir crazy. So let's get out of the house. So hopefully all of you will do something fun after this class as well. But here we are. Let's get started so we can continue our lives after this class. You are in the fundamentals of project management training class. Now, this class is going to take us somewhere between, we may finish at 3 or maybe a little sooner than that. But the core goal of this class is to teach you the foundations of project management in a very clear, concise manner. And like I said, if you're new to project management, then this training will help you understand what is project management, what is a project manager, what does it mean when we talk about the 5 process groups. And if you have taken a project management class, then this class will solidify your concepts of project management and give you a review more than anything else. So for those that already have their PMP and are joining this class, then this will serve as your 8 PDUs that you can submit for to maintain your certification. So, I welcome all of you. I want this to be a very interactive class. Again, this training is being recorded. It will be listed on YouTube. So if you want to not share your video camera off, I completely understand that. And, or if you want to change your name, I understand that as well. So let's go ahead and get started then. One of the things that I believe in is active learning, and that's what 3T is all about. 3T is to help us understand and really take these concepts to see how we can use them in the world of project management. So, but the active learning part of it is also used in how do we pass exams, right? Because the first goal in all of this is let's pass those certification exams while we also understand how to apply these concepts to our jobs. Okay, so why did my slides change? And so that's our approach here, but here's what we're going to learn, our outline. We will learn about getting started with project management, initiating a project, planning for time and cost, planning for your project risks, communication and change control, managing a project, closing a project. So in the chat box, just go ahead and let me know, have you ever worked on doing any of these things that we see here on the screen? Have you worked on initiating a project, planning for one? Let me know what part of project management you have experience in, or possibly all of it, right? So I'll be looking for your answers there. But in terms of getting started with project management, we're going to identify the characteristics of a project, identify the project management lifecycle, identify the role of a project manager. And here is a thing for us, right? A lot of times when we study these concepts, we sort of think, oh, someone else is doing the job. But it's not, it's you. So you've got to sort of look at this and say, I am the PM. There's no one else. So you are in charge of your, you are in charge of this entire project from start to finish. And so you've got to own that role, right? How do you feel like just owning the role of a PM? And maybe right now on a piece of paper or in your notebook, you can write, I am the project manager. Carissa is the project manager. Tanisha is the project manager. Samira is the project manager, right? So just own the role, because when you own the role, then you'll say, I'm responsible for these processes. So let's change our mindset there. Thank you for participating in the chat box. It allows me to see where, what you're thinking and engaging with you. One of the most important concepts that we have to get down, doesn't matter what your experience level is here, understanding the definition of a project. So you want to make sure that you have that solidified in your mind, right? Project is temporary. It's a temporary work endeavor. What that means is that it has a start date and it has a finish date. And within that start and finish date, you're working on something unique, a product, a service, a result, a research paper, a prototype, right? You're working on something unique, and that unique result that you're working on or objective has to meet some sort of a business value. What that means is that this project is bringing the organization either a better reputation, it's updating their technology, it's bringing them more money, it's maintaining their reputation in the market, it's ensuring that the organization is up to date with other organizations in that same industry. It's possibly helping an organization get into another market segment. But whatever it is, it has a start date, it has a finish date, and a project is at the end of a project, you're done and the team gets released. So the role of a PM is to make sure this project gets started successfully and it finishes successfully. While in the middle of all that, you're just busy, right? Think about bees. It makes me think about the bees and how they're working. They're all working together, right? To make sure that, let's say the queen is the project, right? That the hive is efficiently doing what it's supposed to do. And that's the role of a project manager. You are using all of the tools and the techniques to make sure your project meets its objectives. So really firm on this one. Make sure you have that down as what is a project? This is your definition there. The other thing we have to understand is that the difference between operational tasks and projects. So if this is a new world for you, then projects might be unfamiliar in terms of, the work that you've been doing. So let's distinguish between operational tasks and projects. Operational tasks are tasks that you're doing on a daily basis. For example, answering the phone to take appointments, that's operations. The individuals that work for help desks, right? That's operational. They are doing tasks to keep a system going. You might produce some outcomes, but they're not necessarily unique results because the project is unique. You're not repeating the same exact blueprint over and over again. With every project, there's something different. So think of operations as accounting, billing, customer service, help desk operations, things that happen on a routine basis. Now, again, projects are temporary, they're unique, and have a specific set of objectives to complete. So looking at these definitions between operational tasks and projects, put in the chat box and tell me if you have worked on projects before. Put a yes down or no, and would love to hear that. The project management lifecycle allows you to take a really big idea and divide it into manageable pieces. It's almost saying you can't, what's that saying? You can't eat an elephant with a single bite or something like that. I forgot the saying. But the idea is that you can't complete a project by just saying, I want to update my server. Well, what does that really mean? Or you can have a project that I want to build a home. Well, think about that. If I just said, Camietta or Jasmine, go ahead and build a home. Right? Can you build a home just by me telling you that? No, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say, well, wait a minute, what's the first thing I need to be doing or thinking about for building a home? And you're going to divide that into phases. Logically, in our minds, we're going to do that. Think about cooking, right? If I say I'm going to make a pizza, well, first things you're going to do is, what are the ingredients I need? How long is this going to take me? How do I actually make a pizza? And what kind of pizza do you want? Right? So that's what project phases are all about. It's a group of related project activities resulting in the completion of a major deliverable. Here in the instance of a pizza, the pizza is your major deliverable. The home is your major deliverable. And so you use the project lifecycle to help you break these things down so you can plan for building your home. You can plan for making your pizza. So here, as we can see, is project lifecycle is the manageable sequential phases of work in a project. It constitutes of 4 or 5 phases, right? The idea here is, think about making a pizza, right? Are you going to heat up your oven before going to the store to get all your ingredients? Logically, that doesn't make sense, right? You have to get your ingredients first. You have to make your dough, let it sit there for a little bit. And then when you're ready to make your pizza, then you preheat your oven. So same thing with the project. What is the logical sequential order of making a pizza, of building a home, of implementing a server, of bringing in a new business adventure? What is the sequential order that you should be following? And so right here, as we're looking at this, right, you have the project start, which can be, and we'll go a little bit more detail into this, but you start the project, you have the initial phase, you have that intermediate phase, final phase, and then the project ends. And at the end, we're all enjoying a nice warm slice of pizza, or sitting in our beautiful home, whatever that means for you in terms of your project. But at the end of the day, right, there is a need for a project. There is a need to build a home. There's a need for a new server. There's a need for upgrading our systems. There's a need for coming up with the new market segment. So there's always a need, and there's always a strategic objectives in starting a new project. So projects help carry out activities. They enable our organizations to achieve strategic plans. And strategic organizations can include organizational need. Sorry, I didn't change my slides here. There we go. There's going to be organizational need, market demand, customer request, technological advancements, and legal requirements. So there's always a reason. The individuals that said, yes, I've worked on projects. Do you know why your project was initiated? Can you select one of the reasons here on the slides and put in the chat for me? Why was your project selected or started? Do you know? And that's one of the other things. As part of being, whether you're a project manager or part of a project management team, you always want to understand, why was my project started? Any questions I can help answer at this point? And you can raise your hand and I'll be more than happy to answer your question. And of course, when we understand why our project has been initiated, the other part of it is understanding who our project stakeholders are, right? So let's keep it really simple, right? If we're making a pizza and all your family members want pizza, that means that pizza better taste good or else you're going to get a bad review, right? Who's made a meal for their family where everyone was like anticipating to eat it, and then that day things just went wrong and it didn't come out that great? What was the review that you got, right? What did the family say about that? If you are into cooking. So same thing here, right? Our stakeholders are the people who are going to be eating the pizza, and they have an interest in the outcome. Same thing with project management. The outcome of your project directly impacts them. So that's your project stakeholders. Thank you so much for the input in the chat. So project stakeholders have business interest in a project outcome. The individuals that are going to be moving into the home that you're building, think about their interest in the home. Right? What if they've already sold their house and they're waiting for this new one to be built? And you have to give them the bad news that, well, the project is now delayed by 6 months. Are those happy stakeholders or are they now complaining stakeholders? So that's exactly how projects work. Whether it's a server upgrade, a new system that's being brought in, a new financial, system or whatever it is, application that you're using, that you're bringing in, someone has interest in it. And some of your stakeholders can influence your project's objectives. If I'm making pizza, I know my kids want black olives on their pizza. And if there's no black olives, I will be hearing about it. So that's their requirements. They influence what will be the toppings of the pizza I'm making for them. Same thing with the home. Same thing with any project that you're working on. So, and each stakeholder has a different responsibility on your project, and you have varying levels of authority, right? And again, I'm keeping my examples really simple for our understanding. If I'm baking a pizza here, my husband has a responsibility of getting me everything that's on my grocery list. And that's his responsibility as part of being a project stakeholder, while my kids are just going to eat it and leave me the dishes to wash. But every single person who's involved, whether I'm making it, my husband is going grocery shopping, and my kids are eating it, they're all project stakeholders because everything is dependent on this outcome of what this pizza that's coming out of the oven. Really simple concept, but tie that back to projects. So for example, stakeholders for project involvement involving the expansion of a municipal public library will include government agencies, taxpayers, voters, and private donors. Here are your types of stakeholders. You have your sponsors, your customers, your project managers, project team, and project management team. So at the end of the day, when we know what a project is, then do we understand what project management is, right? And that's the important part of it. A lot of times the word project management is thrown out there loosely, but here is your time to really understand. When I say I understand project management, then what are you really saying, right? And so project management of project activities to meet your project objectives. That means project management is the combination of your knowledge, tools and techniques available to produce an outcome. So this involves scheduling and getting work done, identifying requirements, establishing objectives, balancing quality, scope, time, and cost, addressing stakeholder expectations and concerns. The example here would be a project management for building a new wind farm, communicating cross-functionally, delivering work on time within allotted project, quality specifications, and so on. So let's do a quick exercise here. Anyone willing to be part of my exercise here? I'm looking for any of you to volunteer, and we are going to plan a vacation. So who wants to plan a vacation with me? And you're going to be the client and I'll be your travel agent.
I'll be your client, MJ. This is Kim.
Hey, Kim. Awesome. All right. So thank you. While we look at this slide, let me help Kim figure out where she wants to go for vacation. So one of the first things I'm going to ask is scheduling, right? So Kim, have you thought about going on vacation?
I have.
All right. Do you have a time or a month or, are you thinking about when you want to go?
Possibly November, December, but if that's not doable, then June, July.
All right. That sounds, so possibly a holiday vacation.
Yes, please.
All right. So that's the first bullet we just asked Kim. The second bullet I'm going to ask her is, well, Kim, that sounds really great. Where would you like to go?
MJ, I think somewhere warm, possibly the Maldives.
Oh, wow. I like that. And what, Maldives, okay, well, that's great. See, we're identifying requirements here. We're asking Kim, okay, not only when do you want to go, but where do you want to go? And Kim, how long do you want to stay for?
7 days.
7 days?
Yes.
Thank you for confirming that. And in terms of the hotel, would you like to stay somewhere? Would you like to stay on the water, because you can do that in the Maldives? Or would you like to stay a little bit further from the beach? What are your thoughts around there?
I would like to stay on the water. I did some research and they have these, they're not chalets, they're on stilts. So they're like, they're not cabins, but I'm not exactly sure, but I know that they're on the water.
Okay, thank you for telling me that. And now as a PM, what you're hearing when you're identifying requirements is that your client isn't really sure about, she knows what she wants, but there's a time and opportunity here for you to solidify exactly what she wants. Because part of project management is that if you don't get your client's requirements right, or don't understand what they are, then we're possibly going to give Kim a vacation that she didn't want. And we don't want that. So, okay, Kim, so on the water. Now, in terms of your budget, what is your budget amount that you have allocated for this?
For this particular trip, I have about 10,000.
Perfect. And from a quality perspective, are you looking for a 3-star experience or a 5-star experience?
I can do the 4 to 5-star experience depending on the price.
Thank you. And do you see how I made sure that Kim understood that quality comes with a price? Even though we might want the 5-star, but if we want to stay within the 10K budget, that might not be a possibility. So as project managers, we're also listening to make sure that we're helping our clients realize that maybe your expectations are not within your budget. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that third bullet establishing objectives. Now, Kim, thank you for all this information. What is your goal of going to Maldives? Can you help me understand what your objectives are of going there?
Just get away. Just need some relaxation, away from phones and computers.
That sounds amazing. Take me with you. So now what we did was we asked Kim, what do you want to do there, right? If she said, I want to go, I don't know if there are mountains in Maldives, but if I want to go on hikes and I want to just be around nature, she didn't say any of that. But just because she didn't say it doesn't mean that we don't confirm that with our customer. We can say something like, okay, you want this to be a relaxing trip. Do you also want to go into the city and see some of the cultural things? And let's see if she wants to do that. So Kim, would you like to see some of the cultural things or possibly do things beyond the beach?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you for that. So now what we're doing is, thank you, Kim, so much. And now I'm going to help you understand how all of that fits into bullet number 4 and 5. So thank you for that, Kim. So what I did, as you all heard, was I talked to my customer. I said, when do you want to go? I said, what do you want to do? And I said, what is your objectives of going on this vacation? And through all of that, Kim gave me her budget amount. She gave me her time, and she told me exactly what she wanted to do. And she said the stars, what the quality of the hotel and the experience that she wants to have when she's in Maldives. So didn't we just cover quality, scope, time, and cost? So part of a PM's life and work is when our customers tell us this is what we want, that we then balance the quality, scope, time, and cost. Because I could give Kim a 5-star experience that might be $30,000, but now we're minus $20,000. Will I put that pressure on Kim to up her budget by $20K when maybe that's not something she's comfortable with? So project management is a art form in a sense where you are truly listening, you're understanding so that you can balance quality, scope, time, and cost, and that you give, and that I, as a travel agent, give Kim exactly the experience she wanted. And what could possibly happen is I could come back to Kim and say, hey, Kim, actually, if you go in November and December, this trip that you want could cost you about $7,000. Now, if you want to go in June and July, because that is high season, with what you have asked for, we can take you there and give you the relaxation you want with a little bit of culture and seeing nature beyond the beach. And that may cost you somewhere between $10,000 to $12,000. What would you like to do?
That's for me, MJ. Okay.
Yeah. What would
so
you like to do? Yeah.
Okay, MJ, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I can. So basically at this time, what you could also do before your customer makes a decision of which to go ahead and book the vacation, before Kim, you even book your vacation, as your travel agent or quote unquote PM, I could come back and say, Kim, if you go in November, December, everything you told me that you want, we can actually make that happen for 8,500. But if you want to go in June and July, that's actually going to cost you about $10,000 to $12,000. And now I'm giving you an option. And if you go in June and July, that's when most of the tourists are there, and the hotel's giving some extras like champagne in the room, right? There could be some incentives there of going in June and July that we can present to our customer. And now I'm giving you, Kim, 2 options. Do you want to go in November, December, maybe when it's a little slow? Or do you want to go in June and July, get some of those incentives, but also go when it's like happening, right? In Maldives. And I'm giving you a choice now, and you can select from one of those.
Okay, I think I'll do June and July. I like incentives, and it's still kind of within my budget. You said 10 to 12,000.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 2,000 more is not not killing me.
Perfect. So thank you for that, because now I'm giving my customer to make a decision. We as PMs don't make decisions for our customers. We present the information, we take our feelings and we put them in a bucket, because this is not our vacation. This is Kemp's vacation, right? And so that's all about project management. Was this helpful to understand? Simple format, right? Sometimes very realistic examples or just simple examples help us understand things a little better. Good, perfect. Now, learning a little bit about program management, right? Programs, you may all have heard about project management. There's also program management. There's also portfolio management. So one of the things that happens with larger organizations, is multi-million-dollar organizations, is that they have initiatives, right? For example, Coca-Cola might decide that they want to help Morocco, because Morocco just went through a major earthquake. They want to help Morocco with building their economy, and they want to start with, building up all of the schools and the education sector of Morocco, the country. And now here's the thing, right? So that initiative on its own has to be broken down to projects. So what organizations do is they create portfolios or initiatives, you can call them, which is a large idea, then break those down into programs to say, we will work on girls' schools, boys' schools, and we will work on schools that receive foreign aid from the United States. So now you have 3 programs that you can further divide into projects. So I can assign Jasmine to the foreign schools that get aid from the USA, and I can say, Jasmine, you're the project manager for establishing all of those schools under this particular program, but still one initiative. And I can say, for example, Jasmine Griffin to say, you're going to work on all the girls' schools in Morocco and make sure that we build those schools, and that is your project. So you can have several projects and several project managers, as we're seeing. Let me show you all the diagram here, under a single program. And the person that's overseeing all of these project managers, the next level up, as we see over here, is your program manager. Organizations, large organizations, multi-million-dollar organizations do this because they have to. There's no other way to say, I want to build schools in Morocco and just leave it at that. You have to further divide that into, what does that mean? Maybe Coca-Cola wants to establish a market there. Maybe Pepsi is the one who has a strong market hold in Morocco. And now Coca-Cola is like, nope, we're going to go do something that's nonprofit, but something that will bring us more market visibility and do something good for that country. And so they'll take these initiatives and divide it into programs and subdivide those programs into projects, and then assign a project manager to each of those, so that every single one of those projects can be accomplished and done for Coca-Cola to say, we spent $1 billion in Morocco and we built up their schooling system. So program management is a centralized and coordinated manner to meet the program objectives, right? As I mentioned, it involves managing interdependencies between projects. The girls' schools and the boys' schools and the school that's getting funding from the US all have interdependencies. They might be working based off of the same curriculum, or they might be falling under the same Department of Education. And you might have the same resources between those projects. That's okay, right? So allocating resources, prioritizing efforts, maintaining project alignments with business objectives. That last bullet here, what this is really saying is, maybe we start with the schools that are funded by US, because then we can double our efforts and get those schools up and running and have all the kids go there first, and then build up the girls' schools and the boys' schools next. Part of being a project manager is also understanding priority. Now, for those that are new to project management, this might be a little bit advanced, right? But it's helpful to get out of your this very limited mindset. So get out and think really big. Project management isn't only about the deliverables. It's about why are we doing this? It's about the program. It's about the larger initiative. So we have some examples here. The Apollo program's mission to enable a man to reach the moon within 10 years. So, and then you have Apollo 1, 2, and 3 were short-term projects to ultimately get a man on the moon. And here's an example of portfolios. And since I already gave you guys the example of how all of that works, you see how this is set up? You have portfolio management, then you have programs, and under all the programs, you have projects. Think about emergencies that happen in the US, whether it's a fire in California or an earthquake or a hurricane, right? It starts with, we need to help people. But what does that really mean, right? What does that really mean? So it's divided in this way so that you can manage each piece. So at the end of the day, a portfolio is a collection of programs or projects grouped to achieve an organization's strategic business objectives. Can you think of any portfolios that your organization currently has in place? Or have you ever worked on a larger initiative that had to do with reducing hunger, possibly fundraising, or like these large initiatives, and maybe you played a really small role, but you were part of something really big. Can you think of anything like that? Put in the chat box for me. I know Carissa has, because Kay, you and I have been talking about that. And so portfolio management is the management of a portfolio to ensure that the programs and projects in the portfolio contribute to achieving the organization's strategic goal. And the strategic goal can be to reduce hunger in the US by 40%, right? Or to reduce homelessness in the US by 40%, whatever it may be. It's a larger initiative here. Yep, I love that. Examples, portfolio management in a construction company, project managers to manage residential, commercial, and infrastructure-based projects. The goal is to gain ground on residential projects while ensuring that the projects meet the strategic objectives of an organization. So thank you, Kate and Tanisha, for putting that on there. But yeah, Carissa, I know you've done a lot of charity work. The whole back to school and the backpack drives that you've done, those are all part of a larger initiative, right? Making sure that those below the poverty line actually the kids get school supplies. So those are part of huge initiatives. Andre says, yes, COVID in Guinea and Africa. Yep. So Andre, see, you've worked on projects. I love this. So I'm glad that you are all thinking back to larger initiatives, and we have. And so the next thing we're going to learn about are deliverables, right? Project deliverables. These are outputs, the output from the project management activities. Deliverables are determined based on the size and requirements of the project. Deliverables are determined based on the size and requirements, so that's twice in there, of the project. So the project deliverables of a software updating project is the final and approved version of the software. In the case of when Kimietta and I went through her vacation plans, right? I was the project manager for her to schedule her travels. My deliverable to her, because she's my customer, would have been her entire details of her vacation plans, flight information, hotel information, activities that she's going to be doing, ride from to the airport and to the airport, luggage information, possibly what she needs to pack, possibly some COVID precautions that she has to be thinking about, possibly a checklist of all US, maybe a checklist of all emergency things, nearest hospital, US Embassy, a contact there in case she, God forbid, gets stuck, right? So that's my deliverables to Kimietta, to make sure that she has everything she needs so that the day that she goes to the airport, she doesn't have to think about anything. Those are project deliverables. The output of what you're doing together. So how did I create those deliverables? I took my knowledge, combined it with tools and techniques of project management, and produced a deliverable. And so, and the way I did it, right, when Kim told me about her vacation plans, I had to follow a pattern to make sure that I covered all my bases. Initiating, I asked Kim for if you're going to hire me, we have to sign a contract so I can make sure that I am the only travel agent you're working with. Don't we have to do that first? And that's what happens in initiating your project charter. Then once Kim is like, yes, you're my travel agent, then I went into planning. And I created everything I planned. I talked to her. I created the cost, the schedule, the requirements. We know she wants to go to Maldives, and we know she wants to go in June. We know she has a budget. She has a timeline, 7 days. We know her quality, the level of quality she's expecting. I figured all of that out in planning. And executing is the day that Kim goes to the airport, starts her vacation. Right? Executing could be that, or executing could also be me submitting those deliverables, creating those deliverables for her. The checklist, the travel plans, the emergency numbers. And I want to correct myself there. That would be the executing. The monitoring, controlling would be when Kim is at the airport. And now I monitor her getting to her destination safely, making sure there weren't any flight delays, right? What are some of those things? Did she get the meal she wanted at the airport, on the airplane, right? And then when she reaches her destination, making sure she has everything there, right? That's falls under monitoring, controlling as well. And the vacation project doesn't end until Kim gets home. And she says, MJ, I'm home. This was so much fun. Let's plan next year. That's when the project closes.
MJ, can you explain executing again?
Yes, executing is when you're creating your deliverables. It's when I'm working to create your travel plans, your COVID checklist, your travel checklist, things to pack, your flight information. I am now working with different airlines. I'm working with the US Embassy to make sure there aren't any country alerts that I should be aware of. So it's me as your PM creating all those deliverables, and all of that happens in executing. Mm-hmm. So the skills of a project manager, right? You might be, I hear some people, and listen, right? I'm giving you guys really simple examples. Think about your life where you have, how many of you have planned your own vacations? Or your family vacations? You know, that's not an easy task. I'll tell you guys that. Planning your family vacation, That's a project. Or if you've had to plan a wedding, that's a project. Or if you've had to do a construction in your home, finding contractors, hiring one, making sure they're doing the work, that's a project. Anything that has a start and finish date and at the end is a unique product or service is a project. The Eiffel Tower in Paris was a project. The pyramids in Egypt are projects. The China Wall is a project. All of those are projects. So now, in terms of the skills of a project manager, I'll tell you what, that's already inherent within us. You just have to find them. You just have to realize what they are. But we are project managers. Most of us are. If you're in this class, most likely you already know that it's in you. So looking at this list, right? How many of us have good interpersonal skills? This has to do with being able to communicate, being able to work with different types of people, being able to hold good relationships, right? Build relationships, keep people updated on information, network. How many of you are good at that? How many of you have general management knowledge and skills? General management and knowledge skills. For example, this could be your boss gives you something to get done with minimal direction. You know at least where to go to find the resources to get it done. That's what this is about. Understanding of project environment means, do you know what the purpose of your company is to begin with? And then do you know that the work that you're doing, how it aligns to a bigger picture? You might, you'll need knowledge of application area. This could also mean the industry that you work in. Whether it's in events management, nonprofit, marketing, IT, do you understand that industry? Or at least have like a 30 to 40% understanding of your application area. And then just project management knowledge, and that's everything we're learning now. What is a project? What's a program? What's a portfolio? What are the 5 process groups or phases of a project? So in all of these, maybe the only thing that we have to increase a bit is this first bullet. What are your thoughts on that? So do you all consider yourself project managers now? Or at least individuals that can work on projects? Would you say yes to that or no? Or maybe? We have a couple more slides and then I'm going to give you all your first break. So just stay with me a tiny bit more. This slide talks about the types of organizational structures. Again, if we talked about businesses, anyone here a side entrepreneur or someone who has a little side business that they work on? If you are willing to share that, you can put it in here. But for the longest time, when I had my corporate job, I also was an entrepreneur on the side. And that's when you sort of get a little bit into what it means when we say organizational structures. But organizational structures allow organizations to create specific ways of doing business that brings them value faster, or money, or profits, or customers faster, right? And so organizational structures then are ways of organizations managing their portfolios, their programs, and their projects. And why is this important to you? Is because by understanding your organizational structure, whether you work at a hospital or you work in a another organization at the airport, or government, they all have structures, right? Like how many of us get annoyed with how DMV does things? Well, the way they do things comes straight from how the DMV organization established, Department of Transportation. That's an organizational structure that tells DMV what to do. So in all of that, that means if you're a project manager for the Department of Transportation and you work on their projects, you have to understand how they operate and what does that mean to your role as a project manager. The biggest mistake that people make is, well, I'm a project manager and I should be allowed to do everything that I studied in my PMP class, but I'm not. I'm going to quit, right? That happens a lot. So the truth of it is that that not all organizations work like the book that you're studying. So you have to learn what your authority level is, and that your authority level as a PM really depends on whether you are in a functional organization, projectized, matrixed, or composite, which is a combination. Yep. So Kim, thank you for sharing that, because you have to think through so many things when you are working on your special projects. The other thing that we have, that organizations have, is a project management office. Now, think about it this way, and maybe I'll get your input, right? Wouldn't it be nice if Kim, for her vacation, had a place she could go to where there was an entire standard operating procedures on how to book your Maldives vacation from A to Z. Do you think if she had a book like that, that would help her in understanding what it all entails? And maybe she didn't even need to do half the things, like go Google information or ask friends. Do you think that would have been helpful for her if she had an SOP like that? Maybe in that SOP, it even said what to pack there, or what not to do, or what not to eat. Right? And so when we think about a program management office, think about it as a place that's supportive to projects. It's wonderful to have a project management office because they're going to give you the processes, tell you the best tools you use, and give you the templates so that you can manage your projects really well. As a travel agent for Kim, I would love to have a project management office inside of my travel agency where I didn't have to recreate some of those travel checklists or the travel plans or the emergency information, that if I went to my project management office, it was already there. And inside of my project management office, I had an SOP for my clients on traveling to specific countries. And I didn't have to recreate that each and every time. And that's the role of a project management office. Let's not recreate things. Let's do them once and have a centralized place that we can keep it. Sorry, here's your slide. Project management office. Any questions here or thoughts? Before we get to IT projects, I do want to give you all a quick break. So let's go ahead and take a break. It's 11:03. Come back by 11:15. I'm going to make this a little longer break. And when we get back, we will continue with our slides. So 11:15 a.m. break is over, and I'll see you all really soon. All right, let me know if you're back, please. Welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back. How is my pace? Am I going too fast, too slow? Any recommendations or thoughts? Let me know in the chat box. Okay. Let me see, Andre, I'm gonna go ahead and put you in. Oh, are you in the class? Oh, there you are. Okay. You can change your name, Andre, when you are logged in. Okay, good. And hopefully, you know, like I said, this version of the class is so much lighter than if you were to take like a full PMP class. So I bring it down a lot. I give more life examples, real life or simple examples versus complex project examples here. So now we are in the part of the training where it's going to get a little bit more technical, right? Still on the surface, but just a bit technical. Now, I know that probably most of you are interested in IT project management. You know, if you are, then this is a really good time for you to understand the difference between project management and IT project management, right? And most of my career coaching clients that come to me, they always want to get into IT. And I have to sort of say, well, what part of IT, right? Do you want to build a new software? Do you want to, you know, take a software that's already built and implement it at an organization? So there's so many different aspects of IT project management. And you're not going to really know which part that you want to be in unless if you, you know, just sort of dive into one and then find your grounding and then pick an area that you like the most. I know that we have someone here in the class who works in the area of cybersecurity, and whenever they want, they can tell me, and I would love to call on them so they can tell me what they do, because it would give a really good perspective to those that want to understand what IT project management is. So when we talk about IT project management, you could still use a phase by phase or a process group, you know, approach to project management, IT project management. But a lot of IT project managers and or the approach that they use is an agile approach, whether that's Scrum, Kanban, Crystal Method, XP Metaphor, you know, and there's a utilization of the software development lifecycle, which is the SDLC process. So there's a little bit more to IT project management that you have to learn about as a project manager before you can manage one on your own. Yet, as a project team member on IT projects, if someone gives you an opportunity, jump on it, because it is a really good experience to have. So there's just a little bit more when it comes to IT project management and certain in terms of approaches and other things that you have to know. However, the concept of managing a project management pretty much stays the same with a few additions. Anyone has any questions in reference to IT project management, raise your hand or just put in the chat and I'll be more than happy to answer that for you. What we're looking at here is it's MS Project. It's a project management software that allows you to schedule your project activities, right? If we go back to Kim's vacation, one of the things that would help me as her travel agent, if I knew exactly the work that I needed to get done in order for me to make sure that Kim is on the at the airport in June headed to her vacation. So this is a tool that you can use to schedule your individual activities, have a start date and a finish date, so that you can get things done in a timely manner. This slide is really good because it gives you some guidelines in identifying the role of a project manager. Apply project management knowledge to formalize project management. Apply knowledge of the application area to manage technical challenges. Apply general management skills to successfully manage and control process responsibilities. Apply knowledge of the project environment. Apply your interpersonal skills. Take on additional responsibilities. So this is a really good guideline. And I also shared with all of you the Fundamentals of Project Management book. It's a great book. It's simple, to the point. So that's another tool for you to use to learn about fundamentals of project management. We have some reflective questions here for you. Now, you can raise your hand for this, or you can just put in the chat, so that way we can make sure that I have covered your understanding of these concepts. So the question number one is, who are the stakeholders in the project you're currently working on, and what are their expectations from the project? Do you know who your current stakeholders are on the project that you're working on, and what do they want from you to accomplish for this project? Do you know? And if you don't know, this is a good question to find out, like research and understand why. Two, what organizational structure does your company follow? What is the project manager's level of authority? So if you're not a project manager, then it's sort of thinking about your project manager that you might be reporting up to and asking yourself, is that person allowed to look at the budget? Are there dedicated resources just for their project, or do you work with other project team members who come part-time on your project, do a little bit of work, and then leave? Anyone share to care, or share to care to share? Geez. And maybe you don't know the answers to it, right? Maybe you haven't thought about it, but these are good reflective questions to think about. And so far, what we've done from slide 1 to slide 24, where we're at right now, is get the basics understanding of what is a project and why is it that organizations even initiate them. And now what we're going to get into is initiating a project. So determining the scope of a project, right? In the instance of Kim's vacation, remember I asked her, what do you want? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? When do you want to go? And so that's what initiating the project is to determine the scope of a project, identify the skills of a project team, and identify the risks to a project. So here's what a scope statement looks like. And I want all of you to take a look at this really quickly, right? Because it's pretty detailed, isn't it? It is a document that tells you exactly what is and is not part of the project scope. Everything that as a project manager you are to deliver, and everything you are to leave out. Because if your customer comes to you and says, if Kim comes to me and says, well, calls me from Maldives and says, MJ, I thought you said I was going to get champagne every day, and I don't have champagne every day here in my room. And I would say something like, well, actually, that was an option, but we decided not to take that option because it was going to cost us an additional $4,000. So sort of reminding the customer that that was out of scope. We didn't include that in the requirements because our customers do forget what they wanted from the project. And so the scope statement allows us to really have an alignment so that everyone is on the same page. You're going to have the project name, the authority level, right? Who is in charge of this project? Your name's going to be here as the project manager, the description of a project, the project deliverables, and look at that other word, exclusions. You're also going to have things that are not included as part of the project. You're going to have your project objectives. You will have constraints, assumptions that we would have to consider as part of the project. And when you're looking at this example, don't think of a complex project. Think about you planning a family vacation. And how would you create your scope statement for that? We are also going to learn about scope creep. Scope creep is uncontrolled change. A lot of times what you see happening on projects is all of a sudden your project is delayed by 15 days or 20 days or 6 months. And you look around and you're like, well, I'm not sure how that happened. That could have been because of scope creep. And scope creep is when requirements, the needs and wants of your customers sort of creep in without your without you having the ability or the time or the chance, I should say, to analyze how those new changes or those new requirements have impacted your project schedule, cost, and scope. As you're looking at this diagram, it says if you have uncontrolled scope introduced to your project, it will increase your schedule time and cost. That's what this diagram means. And so if we look at this next slide, this is our constraining factors. This means that if Kamieta said to me, I want a 5-star hotel, that would have increased her cost, possibly made some changes to the scope, and maybe the timeline she wanted to be in, maybe that wasn't available at this 5-star hotel, right? So quality impacts both time, cost, and scope. Think about it this way. If you're building a home and now your budget of $500,000 goes to $1 million because you want top quality, would that increase your time of now building this $1 million home? Yes or no? You put in the chat box. Would it increase your cost? Yes or no? Would it increase requirements or scope? We went from a $500,000 home to $1 million home. So anytime there's a change on your project, it will impact other areas, other baselines. So keep that in your mind. These are your constraint factors. Project assumptions are statements that must be taken to be true for project planning to begin. They must be reviewed and reworked to decide if they prove to be true. For example, there could be a, in the case of Kamieta's vacation, as her travel agent, I come to find out that in June, June is the time when you have a higher chance of a red tide on the beaches, right? In the water. So now I assume for that to be true. And I make sure that I talk to Kamieta about that possibility to see how that could possibly change the timeline of her vacation and the cost and what she can and can't do and where she can stay or not stay. In terms of projects, this could be project resources. Will they be available as and when needed? Technical support, will that be available when needed? Scope of the project, will that remain unchanged? So those are some of your project assumptions that you will capture very early in the project. And this could change your project objectives, right? But at the end of the day, our objectives is get Camietta to her vacation in June. What does that mean? How does our assumptions change at objectives, but also now looking at scope, time, quality, and cost, are we still able to meet the objectives that were indicated? And an objective is criteria to measure whether or not a project is successful. We're only going to know, once Camietta goes on that vacation, because that would be her time to make sure that everything happened exactly as she had told me as her travel agent. And objectives must be realistic and attainable. And examples of project objectives for an add-in component project would be, for scope, add-in component to a word processor application. And time, development to be completed by October 31, 2017, and cost $20, right? And so when we say realistic, for example, if a client comes to you and says, I want to build $1 million home and I want it in the next 5 months, is that realistic? What if a customer comes and says, I want $1 million home, but I don't want to pay $1 million. I want to pay $500,000. Is that realistic? So we can only really meet objectives that are aligned to reality, right? Because we do have customers like that who have some crazy requirements. What is scope? Let's define the scope process. And so in this process, what you're doing is you are creating your project boundaries. What is and is not part of my project. You're firming up the project objectives, the project requirements, the project deliverables. And in all of this, you're also creating these documentations because there could be short-term memory here, issues here, and we want to make sure that everything's documented. And you step in scope definition, right? And this process means that these are your 4 steps that are really important, right? If you're someone who says, I don't really understand what scope means or how I capture requirements from my customer, think about that scenario that Camietta and I went through, yeah, right? I identified project requirements, I defined project objectives, I created a scope statement, and a sign off of the scope statement, which means at the end of my conversation with her, I would have had a document where she confirms everything that I heard, that she said to me, I heard and understood, confirmed, and now I have it in the documentation to make sure that we're all on the same page. Any questions or thoughts here?
MJ, can you give me an example of a scope statement?
A scope statement could be, I'm going to compare it sort of to an agreement document or here's everything I want document. And it looks like right here, like this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here's some guidelines for creating a project scope statement. Justify the need for the project. Why does Camietta want to go on vacation? Because she needs it. She hasn't gone in 5 years, right? And the next one is clearly describe the criteria, critical characteristics and functionality of the project's product or service. Identify all the list of projects' major deliverables. Identify if there are any known exclusions to the project scope. Evaluate and validate or modify the constraints and assumptions. Here's what I can tell you. These guidelines, the reason most projects fail is because they don't follow this guideline. Somewhere this was skipped. So if you've ever worked on a terrible project where the customer was complaining, it's because no one did the project scope statement process right. Develop the project objectives. Use precise and unambiguous language. Send a copy of the scope statement to the project stakeholders for review. Re-examine, reprioritize project requirements if necessary. Redefine project objectives, deliverables, and product scopes description. Include a revised overall cost estimates and define cost limitations. Create schedule milestones and obtain consensus and formal approval from key stakeholders. Now, let me ask all of you, is this helpful for you to see in order to ensure that you have confirmed the needs and wants of your customer? Do you think this guideline would be helpful for you to apply on your projects? There's no harm in copying this on a Word document, turning it into a checklist, and making it a template for your organization. That is the best way that you can make an impact and get yourself possibly a raise. It's the little things that people do that you don't think about that has the biggest impact. Project team. Now, the idea is that, yes, the PM does all the work, but the project team members are as important. So if you've never managed your own project and you've just been part of the project, I can tell you that our team members are our assets. You all are one of the most important part of a project, because if you're not motivated, you don't know what you're working on, you have no clue what the project's about, then guess what? The project's not going to succeed. So your project team is a group of individuals who collectively have skills required to complete a project. Are members of the team that possess distinct skill sets. And so, for example, here, an insurance marketing team, their project objectives would be to marketing a wide range of new insurance schemes. Team members could be marketing specialists, designers, and volunteers. Here's what your virtual project teams look like. You have, remote members, virtual project team members, and local members. So this is some work in the office, others are 100% remote. Totally fine. The objectives of the project doesn't change, but what does change here is that you want to make sure your virtual team members are as engaged and they feel like they're part of the team as much as your on-site team members. Here's identifying skills using the skills metrics. The idea here is that with a skills matrix like this, that every team member knows exactly what they're doing. Have you ever been part of a project or at an organization where they hired you and you just sat there for 6 months and no one can tell you what you're working on? No clue. No one there to help you understand what's going on. No one to give you the project charter. No one to give you the scope statement. No one can even tell you what we're delivering to the customer. Right? So I've been there. It happens. It happens more than you can think about it, and a skills matrix like this allows you to first say, what are the skills I need on a project? So that you don't hire people just for them to sit around. And what are the skills required for this job? And what about supervision required for the job? What's the experience level required for this job? What's the education level required for the job? And who's the team member that can do it? What if you created one of these things for your project? Do you think your organization would appreciate it? Would you have happier team members if they all understood exactly what their role was? And what's holding you back from creating something like this? Now we learn about risks. Risks are interesting because one of the first things about risk is that risks have not happened yet. Risks are both positive and negative, and they can impact parts of your project or your entire project. One of the things that we have to do as project managers and project team members is that we identify risks very early in the project so that we can reduce the impact of that risk. In the example of planning Camieta's vacation, hopefully that does happen and she takes me with her, is that if we know that a red tide is coming, we've identified that risk, and I want to reduce the impact of that risk on Camieta's vacation, then my mitigation would be to look at the news and watch for how long the red tide will be there, because obviously we want clear blue waters when we're going to Maldives, or else why would you want to go, right? So we would look for trigger conditions of when the red tide will go away, so then that way it doesn't impact Camieta's vacation. But if it doesn't go away by the time she goes on vacation, that we buy her insurance that covers the cost of her vacation and she's not out of pocket by $12,000. That's risk management. Impact of risk over time. What you're seeing here is this graph that says at the very beginning of the project, risks don't have a really big impact because you haven't really planned anything, you haven't figured out the dates, you don't know where you want to go, when you want to go on vacation, where you want to go. But as you start planning your project and you confirm some of those requirements, the higher the impact of the risk increases. Are we all seeing that? It's your 5 process groups, or 4 here, and the impact of risk increases as the project moves forward.
Question, MJ.
Yep, go ahead.
So would the risk not decrease the closer to closing?
I guess it's stopping right here. It would, but if you have some risks that have to do with the implementation of the project, for example, in your vacation case, say that you're getting ready to come back, you're traveling, it's the end of your vacation and you're ready to take the flight, but all of a sudden there are really high winds that we didn't anticipate, but possibility of high winds. Now that could impact your travels to getting home. And so that's why, even though it's closing, project is closing and you're ready to come home from your vacation, the probability of that risk impacting your travels back is high. So in instance of a project, if you're implementing a new software solution and now you realize that you missed a group of people that you had to train who are going to be using the software and they were left off, now that there's still probability of the risk impacting your project at that point is really high, because that can delay the delivery of the software to the end users.
Thank you.
So here are some guidelines. Determine the potential people risks associated with the project. People risks. Determine the people risks, resource risks associated with the project. Determine technology risks. Determine organizational risks, finance, law, physical, environmental risks. You have to look at all of those areas that could possibly impact your project. Look out for special circumstances that might arise in any project segment. Consult relevant historical information from previous similar projects. If I'm a travel agent, I'm going to look at the June and July previous travel, my clients' travel dates and what their experience was, and how I can help make sure that my next customers traveling in those same months, that they're not going to go, that they won't face the same issues. So that's why looking back on previous projects helps you make better decisions for your current project. Here's some questions for you to think about. Consider the benefits of developing a project scope statement. How do you anticipate using this process to your advantage in your next project? Take a minute and maybe just write it down. What do you think is the significance of risk identification, and what lessons on risk identification will you offer to others? Take a moment and self-reflect on these questions and possibly even write them down, because it'll help you think about it a little better. They're also available to you in the slides that I've given you, so you can come back and do it as well. The next thing we're going to do is plan for time and cost. If we know where we're going, we know what we want to do. Now it's all about, when do we want to go and how much is this going to cost us, part of our vacation planning. So we can create a WBS, also known as a work breakdown structure. We are going to sequence our activities. What will happen first, and then next, and then after that, and then after that, and what are their dependencies? Create a project schedule, and then determine your project cost. So the thought here is that even though I have a cost for the travel, the Camieta's vacation, it doesn't mean that it will cost $10,000. I have to go back and really plan for that, and then come back and tell him and say, this is how much it's going to cost you. But at this point, I know what her budget is. I know what she's trying to work, the number she's trying to work within. So first, what is a work breakdown structure? And let me show you all the picture first. This is what a work breakdown structure looks like. Put the name of your project up here, divide your project into phases, then take the phases and divide it into deliverables. And you can have deliverables, you can have sub-projects, work packages. It's decomposing your project to the lowest level where you can assign a deliverable to a person. So a WBS, work breakdown structure, is a hierarchical structure that subdivides project work into smaller, more manageable pieces of work. The work defined in the WBS maps to the project scope statement. A WBS identifies your project deliverables, provides detailed information of work at each level. So here's really what this means. You can all give me a minute. You first create a project scope statement. What is and is not part of my project? What are my deliverables? We're identifying that right here in section 5, right? Based off of your project scope statement, then you create a WBS. And you decompose it. Decomposition is a technique for creating a work breakdown structure by subdividing project work. Varies in different projects, concludes when components of work packages are sufficient to complete the work. You also have activities. Activities are the units of project work to be performed to complete a project deliverable. For example, if I'm creating an emergency list for Kim for her vacation, I would search for US embassies. I would look for the nearest hospitals. That's all the research I have to do in the background before I can even create a deliverable. That's my activity. The activities I have to do to create a project deliverable. And you can also take your activities and you can put them in you can sequence them. Research phase, first pass development, review by a manager, incorporate changes, and editing. Think about activity sequencing when you're cooking. Think about activity sequencing if you are getting your kids ready for school. Think about activity sequencing when you're ready to meet your girlfriends or your guy friends out for lunch, right? Before you get there, there's a whole bunch of things you have to do. Do you put on your makeup first and then take a shower? Do you do your hair first and then take a shower, wash your hair? No, it makes zero sense. So activity sequencing has to be logical. And activities do have dependencies, which means if we now know that activities have to they have to be in a logical order, right? Then there are also dependencies. If we want to curl our hair, right? Sorry, this is examples for girls, but if we want to curl our hair, then and the dependency on curling our hair is to first wash it. We have to wash our hair first and then curl it. So, and the relationships here between activities, there are a few different types. There's mandatory, discretionary, and external. Mandatory is you have to. You don't have to wash your hair before you curl it. You don't have to do that. You can curl your hair without washing it. So that's not mandatory, that's discretionary. But what is mandatory is that you have to wash your face before you put on makeup. You can't put on your makeup and then wash your face, right? If you're going out. So there's a mandatory relationship. Wash your face first and then put on your makeup. That has to happen in that order. And then there's external dependencies, right? Especially if you can get ready all you want, but if a friend is picking you up and if they're late, you have to also account for that. How many of you have friends who show up late? They're like 5 minutes away, and it's like, what is your 5 minutes? Can you tell me? Have you left the house? No, I just woke up. I'm sorry. So think about it in simple terms. We don't have to make project management too complex by bringing in complex projects, but we think about these things every day. We think about dependencies every day. So think about it in the simple term and then apply it to project management. And that's what your precedence relationship is, right? The finish to start, the finish to finish, the start to start, the start to finish relationship means you first have to finish washing your face before you can start putting on your makeup. You first have to finish getting ready before you can finish going to the event. So there's relationships that we have to think about. For example, right below the slide, website requirements and specifications are needed first. Then you plan and create the design. Then you might have a website prototype, then another website prototype, and then testing. Can you do testing before having any kind of planning and design available? Can you have a website prototype before having any requirements and specifications of what you want in the website? All questions for you to think about. And that's what precedence relationships mean. What do I have to do before a task, before the task right now can get completed? Precedence means the activities behind it. Website prototyping has to happen first before testing can happen. That's a precedence relationship. This is what your network diagram looks like. Again, not too complex. I'm trying to stay at the surface level here. This shows the relationship between your activities. And this diagram is your entire project. As we look, it has the start and the finish of a project. And these are all the activities you have to get done before you can finish your project. And the arrows determine the relationship of the project. And that's what, is known as arrow diagramming method. Nowadays, even for the purposes of the exam, you don't have to draw these anymore. But as long as you look at this and you can say, this is a schedule network diagram. And the arrows tell me the relationship between activities. You can also place in lag time in here. Lag time is the modification in a logical relationship that delays the start of a successor activity. Is determined by an external or mandatory dependency. For example, a lag would be you wash your face, you put on your cream, but you have to wait 3 hours before you can put on your makeup. The 3 hours is your lag time because your moisturizer needs to set in. That's your lag time. Your lead time, for example, is the modification in a logical relationship to allow the successor activity to start before the predecessor activity. Is implemented to accelerate the successor activity to shorten the overall project schedule. Maybe you decide that you're not even going to put on the face cream. You're just going to go straight to putting on your makeup. Wash your face, put on your makeup. So now you've saved yourself some time. You don't have to wait for the moisturizer to soak in. This is a sequence activities in a project. I'm not going to do this exercise. It's we'll skip that one. The next topic, we already jumped into, actually, what can I help answer any questions in terms of lead, lag, schedule diagram, relationships, dependencies, activity sequencing? Does it resonate to you?
Can you explain lead again?
Lead is when you can save yourself some time. Lead is when you, for example, let's go back here. Lead is when you can, as part of the website prototype or being built, say that section 1 of the, let's say, homepage of the website is built. You can go ahead and test the homepage. So lead is when you can start the successor activity at the same time as the predecessor activity to save yourself some time. You don't have to wait for the whole website to be completed to start testing. You can start testing as parts of the website are being built. So now that's lead time. So it's going to shorten the overall project schedule. All right. Let's go ahead and take another quick break. This won't be a long one. Come back by 11:05, and then we're going to jump into resource management. So, sorry, not 11:05, 12:05. 12:05 p.m. Break is over. And then I will answer your question right when I get back about float and Slack. So you all take your break because that was intense. And then when we get back, we will continue. See you all soon. right, let me know if you're back, please. All right, welcome back. So we do have a question in the chat about float or Slack. So now, those are concepts that have to do with project management. And now I'm going to briefly touch on it just because it makes it a little bit complex for the purposes of this class. However, when we talk about float or we talk about Slack, let me see if that actually does come up. Let me see. Oh, actually, float's coming up. So in the next few slides, and we're going to go over it. So it'll be great because we'll have a visual. I didn't know it would come up here. So let's get through resources and then we'll answer your question. And I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name. I don't want to butcher it. The person that asked the Slack and float question in the chat. Help me. Oladoin. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So the other part of project management is resources. Now, what comes to mind when you think about project resources? Put in the chat box, right? What comes to mind when you think about project resources? Do you think about the things that are listed here? And maybe you do, right? But I want to remind you all, when we say project resources, we're not just talking about people. We're also talking about things that we need, like laptops, software, spaces, cubicles, equipment. So you're really thinking about both the people and the materials. And why are we thinking about that? Because we need those things to do the work of the project. I worked at an organization that I remember they hired me, and I was expecting to get my laptop, at least on the first day, and I didn't have a laptop for the first week of being there. And they gave me a whole bunch of policy documents to read, and I was like, okay, well, what do you want me to work on? And they said they had a delay. They didn't expect to win the project, so they had a delay in ordering laptops for the number of resources. So things like that can happen as well, especially if organizations don't plan ahead of time. You can come across, you can have a resource will have nothing to do for the first week. But what's the risk in that? You can't build a client. If the resource doesn't have the materials it needs to do the work, you can't build a client. So that is an issue, and not a good one, because organizations want to get paid. And so you are going to estimate your resources. How much do I need? How long do I need it for? And that's people and things for your project. And so that's resource estimation. And then there's some techniques you can use known as resource leveling that allows you to use the resources you have for the amount of time that you needed, and that you're not overusing resources beyond its capacity. If I were to relate that back to project management, maybe some of you have gone through this where you've had to work overtime. Who here has had to work overtime more than 40 hours a week just to get something done? Right? There's no one else. And at the end of a 60-hour work week, you're like, I'm burnt out. This is a time for a project manager to look at those resources that are overassigned, overworked, either reschedule the task or get other resources to come in and do the work, or delay the task. Because if you are overworked, guess what? You're going to burn out and you might not have the same energy. So that's where resource leveling comes into play. The other thing here is resource estimation also has to do with looking at a calendar and saying, when are my people available? Right? And so that's why you have the calendar here. You're looking at what needs to get done when, you're looking at when your resources are available. And that's how you can assign people to the individual activities that needs to get done for the project. And that's where you have your, once you determine how long a activity will take and the resource available to do that activity, then you can schedule your project. And so we won't get into too much of the technicality here because you have tools like MS Project Schedule to help you with this. And those currently taking my class, I bring up my scheduling app all the time because it is a great tool to use, honestly. So, and in this instance, if anyone's familiar with Project Schedule, it's a great tool for you to schedule your entire project in. This is what a project schedule looks like. And once you put your schedule in here, the cool thing is that you can actually create reports. Sorry, not reports. You can create views that look like a network diagram once you have your tasks already plugged in to your project. And this is your network diagram right here. It shows you when an activity ends, when the next one starts through those arrows, what those activities are. And this is your network diagram that you can use for your project. And here's what it looks like in your, if you were to do it manually. This network diagram, what it's showing you is that this is the activity that you're working on. DU stands for duration. It needs to get done within 10 days. The earliest it can start is basically on day 1 of your project. The latest it can start is on day 1 of your project, which is 0. But the earliest it can finish is on day 10, and the latest it can finish is on day 10, which means if this activity is delayed more than 10 days, it's going to delay your project. Because the latest it can finish, LF stands for latest it can finish. And all of these, and so when activity A finishes, you see the arrow, activity B can start. So it has a start to finish relationship. And inside of your project scheduling tool, one of the things that you can do is you can actually determine the successors and predecessors in here. See, you have a predecessor column, and you can say that activity 3, right? This is activity 3, cannot be done until activity 2 is done. So that's why the predecessor to it is 2, line 2. This gets a little complex. I'm going to get off that, that part of my teaching. And overall, just understand that schedule development terminal or tool or technique allows you to see the relationship of your project, and also to determine your float and slack and your critical path. So your critical path is the longest path through your project schedule. And if those activities on your critical path are delayed, it will delay your project. And this is what that looks like. In red, this is showing your critical path, which means these activities cannot be delayed. If they are delayed, it will delay your entire project because they don't have wiggle room, or known as float, in or extra days for the team member to get the work done. The activities that are not on the critical path means that they do have float. Means that you have a little bit more time than the duration allocated to finish the project, or that activity. So here's your technical definition of a float. It's the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the earliest start of the immediate successor activity. This is saying, how many days of float, extra days, do I have in activity C before activity D can be delayed? The idea here is that if you have resources that are new, entry level, don't understand a task, then you want to always assign them on activities that are not on your critical path. Because a team member who doesn't know how to do coding or testing may need more than the 4 days to complete the task. And that's okay, because you have some float here for them to take their time. In order to determine your float or your slack, both of them means the same thing, you actually have to do what's known as a forward pass and a backward pass. We're not going to learn that in this class. We actually don't even learn it in the PMP class, because it's no longer required for the exam. And honestly, you have things like Project Schedule that helps you with that. So there's no need to really learn it, because you have technology tools that help you. This is just showing how to do the backwards and the forward pass. And that's your project schedule management, right? And part of it means that you're going to use a tool like this. You have your work breakdown structure. One, you have your scope statement. From your scope statement, you created your WBS. From your WBS, you decomposed it to the lowest level, which is your work packages. Then you took your work packages and decomposed it into activities that allowed you to now create your project schedule as we see it. You can think of these as your work packages, and under the work packages, you have activities that have to get done. Each activity has a start date. Each activity has a start date. Each activity has a finish date that determines your duration. Each activity has a predecessor. What needs to happen first before this activity can get done? Every activity has a resource name. Maybe someone from the class can tell me, is your organization using a tool like this? Have you seen a tool like this? Something similar, Monday.com, Microsoft Sheets. What tool do you all use for project scheduling, for project management? You don't use any tools? If you don't, get familiar with some of these tools, because it will help you in understanding how to manage a project. The next concept here is cost estimating, right? If we go back to our simple vacation planning, we so far have we figured out our requirements. We've figured out when we want to go, and we figured out the resources that we need. What do we need when we get there? What do we need while we get there? Now we're going to understand what the cost is really going to be. Even though Kamieta has a budget for her vacation, we still have to do some things in order for us to firm that up, to make sure that is exactly what the cost will be. And so here, it's basically looking at the needs and wants of your client and saying, okay, how much will the activities cost? adding the activities themselves, the price of that, the price of the resources needed, possibly leaving some money there, cushion money for risks that can happen. And that will be your total budget for the project, or also known as cost baseline. So the best way to determine your project cost, it does involve the work package owner. So who owns the work, since they know the work better, and they can tell you how much it's going to cost. You will gather relevant information that will help you prepare any cost estimates. Right? I would be calling the hotel in Maldives and I would ask, well, how much is it to snorkel? How much is it to take a sunset yacht? How much is it to swim with a dolphin? Right? All of those are some things that Camietta may want to do. But I have to figure out that cost. So we're staying within that $10,000 limit, if not less, right? If you're under budget, that's even better, especially if you can get everything your customer wants under budget, you've won the game. And you're going to look at alternative costing options. What if it is cheaper to do the dolphin excursion with a private company versus hiring someone directly from the hotel? And so these are times for you to say, or do I have savings opportunities here? What are my risks and how much would they cost if it were to happen? And also, one of the things that happens on projects is that even though we have a project budget, we still have accounting measures in place where the expense would be billed to a particular cost account. Here's some questions for us in terms of what we've learned so far. How important is the WBS in creating an effective project schedule? Without the WBS, we can't even create a project schedule. What is the level of decomposition you'd like to achieve in order to manage your project efficiency? At the activity level, because it's at the activity level that you can assign duration, that you can assign a start and a finish date, and a person that will do it, will do the work, that is. Question 2. How will the ability to estimate cost effectively improve your performance on the job? One, by estimating or having the ability to estimate cost will, one, set perimeters of how much money can be spent. 2, if you meet those perimeters, that builds trust with your customer. The next topic here is planning for project risks, communication, and change control. So, at this point, what we've done, again, is we had to really figure out what our clients' requirements were. Because if we didn't have that, we couldn't really create a project scope statement. We created the project scope statement that allowed us to create the WBS. We decomposed the WBS to create our project schedule. We then figured out, okay, who's going to do this work that's on this project schedule. Then we figured out, we also sequenced our project schedule, and we figured out what our critical path is so that our project isn't delayed. Then we determined our cost. Now it is about making sure that we are planning for project risks, communication, and change control. So analyze the risks to a project, create a communication plan, and plan for change control. We also figured out our risks. Sorry, we did review that as well. That's where we talked about the red tide coming. So qualitative analysis is another way for you to take a look at all of your risks and rank them and prioritize them. We just learned about this in our PMP class, but qualitative analysis, think about it this way. If you're planning a vacation and you've made a really long list of everything that could go wrong, would it be helpful to rank the worst risks to the lowest level risks so that you can tackle or really understand what are the top risks that can impact my project? And that's what qualitative analysis is all about, is prioritizing your risks, categorizing them, and seeing how it impacts your project. Then you take those top risks, and you can use this quantitative risk analysis method to further analyze your highest ranked risks. So this allows you to say, I know what my highest ranked risks are, but I also know exactly how it impacts my project. And if this project is too risky, maybe I won't even do it. If this vacation is too risky, maybe I won't even go. If building a home is too risky at this current market, maybe I won't build a home. And that's why these processes matter. You are going to create a risk plan, a risk response plan. And so this is saying, I now have identified all of my risks. I've qualified them, ranked them from highest to lowest. I've also taken my highest risks and really understood what part of the project this impacts. And now I need a response to these risks. Will I accept them? Will I avoid it? Will I reduce the impact of this risk by mitigating it? Or will I get some insurance and transfer the risk to a third party? That's for you to figure out. That's when you go through every single one of the risks you've identified and you figure that out. What you should do with every single risk. Anyone here use a risk register on their current projects, risk register or issue log, or have risk meetings? You put a yes or a no down, or tell me more about it if you like. Here are some guidelines for analyzing the risk to a project. Examine the list of identified risks and make sure all the identified risks are documented. It's not just the ones you want to document, it's all of them. Include guidelines or requirements regarding the outset of the risk. Analyze the data available for each risk. Analyze assumptions identified during risk identification to make sure that it's valid. Or is it false, right? We have to figure that out. Analyze the probability and impact of every risk. What's the probability of a red tide coming? And what's the impact of a red tide on my vacation? Consult historical information. Look at other similar projects, other things that could help you understand whether this risk is going to happen or not. Prioritize your risks and document all changes. And once you do that, you would have a risk register that looks like this. Every risk is going to have a number. You'll have your risks written down. You'll have a number for probability, and you have a number for impact. And you multiply these two numbers, and that's how you get your risk score. So the highest ranked risk here on the list is Steve Jones' schedule. Any questions about risk or any thoughts? Now we get into our communications planning. A communication plan allows you to create a roadmap or a document that says how you will be communicating with your stakeholders, with your team members. What are the different kinds of communication methods that you're going to use in order to communicate with your team? Is it, will you use Teams, Zoom? And what are the reportings? How frequently will you report on the status of the project? Who should be communicated to, and using what method, and how frequently? That's what a communications management plan is for. And making sure that your team gets the communication that they need in a timely manner, because does it make sense to communicate something that is a week late? How do you communicate something that's urgent? Do you pick up the phone and call, or do you send an email? What would you do? If it's an urgent matter, would you pick up the phone or send an email? Most don't know. And so this is a time for you to sit with your team and say, when there's an urgency, what's the best approach, right? And Kim is saying phone. Absolutely. Do not send an email if it's an urgent matter. Then follow up with an email. Even more perfect. Here are your guidelines for a communication plan. And these guidelines are awesome, right? Especially if you want to turn them into checklists. Determine a collection and filing structure. Determine the communication needs of the project stakeholders. Analyze the value of providing the information to the project. Evaluate any constraints and assumptions to determine their possible impact on communication planning. Determine the appropriate communication technologies to use. Determine a distribution structure. And here's more on creating a communications plan. Arrive at schedules for the production of each type of communication. I don't know what that means. Essentially, the whole idea of a communications management plan is that you've worked through all the possible brainstorming and ways that you need to communicate to your stakeholders, but within a given time and manner based on the needs of the people on your project, your stakeholders. That's what's important here. Now, we get into change management, right? Change management, if you've never worked on a project where they had a change management system, or this is a new concept to you, think about it this way. At this point of the project, right, as a travel agent for Kamieta, I have gone ahead, booked her hotel. I have booked her airline tickets. I have booked all of the excursions she wants to go to. I have possibly made restaurant reservations for her. I have, as a travel agent, basically planned her whole vacation, and we came up that all of this is going to cost her less than $10,000 with the 4.5 quality star quality that she wants. Right, we've determined that. And Kamieta signed off on it. Then a week later, she calls me, she goes, MJ, I actually have changed my mind. A friend of mine just told me that there's another hotel and it's closer to some really fun things, and I actually want to stay there. Can you do that for me? Right? And I'm going, okay, possibly. I get all the information for her, and I call the hotel. I see what their rates are. I see if they have availability. I come back and calculate the cost. I see how that aligns to Kamieta's dates for traveling. I see how that impacts possible quality, cost, schedule. I look at all of it before I can say yes or no. And once I have my information, I can come back and say, hey, Kamieta, actually, yes, you can go there. And it does look like a really fun hotel, but it's going to cost you $2,000 more, and they don't have availability on your last day of stay. What would you like to do? So same thing would change here on a project. Your customers will come to you and want a change. And while change is okay, you as a PM cannot say yes or no to a change until you have evaluated how that change impacts your project, just like the scenario I gave. So here are some examples of change control, right? Identify what will be considered a change that is significant enough to require a management approval. Gather any relevant historical data within the organization that relates to the process of identifying, documenting, approving, or rejecting and controlling changes to the project baseline. As her Kamieta's travel agent, if the change does not impact her schedule, cost, or quality, I can just send her an email and say, I can go ahead and make this change. Actually, it doesn't impact anything for us. Just confirm that this is what you want. And she'll say, yep. But if it impacts her budget by $2,000 and now the last day of her vacation, we don't know where to put her, can I charge her credit card without her authority? And can I leave her hanging on that last day? Kamieta, how would you feel if I did that to you? Right? Charge your credit card and then
I would fire you, MJ.
Exactly. And that's why some PMs do get fired. So, and I give this example because you have to, we can't be yes, what is it called? Yes men or women, right? We have to come back to our clients and say, I hear you and I know that you want this change. Can you give me until the end of the day so I can analyze how this impacts our project? And then put it through a change management system. Because no, you might not have the authority to approve it. You may need a management approval to even approve the changes. Maybe we have the travel agency has a relationship with the hotel that was where we already booked it. And if we change our clients' reservations from there, we might get charged a fee. So as a travel agent, I have to think about what my manager is going to say. What are the things I have to consider? So here's some things for you to think about. How would a project benefit from a comprehensive risk planning? Is it beneficial? Should projects have a system for risk management? I'm going to switch that question too. Is it important to have a change management process? Can it help you from saving thousands of dollars possibly and a headache later on on your project?
Question, MJ. So would this be the time to so that would be a change request, right? So we would submit a form?
Yes.
If a customer, okay.
Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to say yes that strongly. I was coughing. But the idea here is that in the change control process, that if your client identifies a change, that you actually do document it. And I'm sorry, I did miss that part. I wanted to add that. It should be a formal process. A verbal exchange is okay. Like if I got off the phone with you, Kim, and I was like, yeah, sure, let me look, I should confirm that change in an email. And that's what the change management process talks about. It has to be a formal process. It can't be like, sure, and then it's never documented. And then now you have scope creep, uncontrolled changes. So absolutely. Great question there. Do you need a change to KIT? Absolutely. So we're at the final leg of our training here. It probably went really fast, not over allocated time, depending on, didn't know if you all had questions, but managing a project begins with the project work, executing your project plans, creating your project plans and then executing them. As a PM, you will have the responsibility to track the project's progress. Am I within my budget or above my budget? Am I on time with my schedule, or are there any delays? As a project manager, you will be creating performance reports on risks that are coming up, issues you're dealing with, and the health of your project. Is it doing well? Is it a red light, orange light, or green light? As a project manager, you also have to understand, how am I going to, what is my change management process? What does that look like? Who is going to approve the changes? Who can request changes? And how will they be approved? And so at the end, you are, what we're getting at is, you're now at the point of your project where you're going to get into kicking off your project and starting your work. So the team acquisition process means that it may be here that yet you've also, in the planning of your process group, you've identified that you don't have all the competencies of what you need in order to get this project done within your organization. So you might be thinking about outsourcing as well for new resources or for new contractors or vendors to come in to do parts of your project. And that's okay. If that happens, it just falls under your procurement process, also known as the acquisition process. So the kickoff meetings are conducted at the beginning of a project. Kickoff meetings are great. I don't know if anyone here has been in one, but you invite everyone, all the project team members, all the key stakeholders, really anyone who's impacted by the project, has an interest in the project. And this is a time for you to introduce the project to the entire organization. Talk about what the scope is, talk about upcoming deliverables, introduce the team, and so on. And so here's some guidelines for beginning your project work. Turn this into a checklist. Start with conducting a kickoff meeting so that everyone knows we're excited, we have a project coming up. The next thing you're going to do is call for one team member to take responsibility of taking notes on important project-specific information. Make sure that team members and sponsors understand the project charter. You will review the project plan with the contributors. You will define roles and responsibilities. You will also outline the resources that will be available to the team. You will have the project sponsor explain why the project's work is important and how its goals are aligned with a larger organizational objectives. In that meeting, you're also going to document all the decisions and follow-up actions decided in the kickoff meeting. You will discuss the organizational policies and procedures that the organization has in place regarding project execution to ensure predictable and consistent results. In line with good project management practice, use the artifacts necessary to get the job done, and be vigilant in collecting project information from stakeholders and sponsors. So this is your entire checklist. If you've ever wondered, what do I do in a project kickoff in order for me to start my project? This is it. So this completes our planning process group. And now, because we know exactly what we need in order for us to achieve the goals of our project. And this leads us to project execution process group. And so this involves just following your plans to create, following your plans, following your project schedule, and creating your deliverables. This is a time where the project manager is really leading the team, making sure everyone understands what they're working on, making sure everyone's following the plans, and creating the deliverables for the project. This is also a time where you're checking for quality. Is my process working? Are my templates working? Do I need more project management tools and techniques? Under quality assurance is where you are looking at the overall project quality. And to execute your project, you're going to ensure that the project starts and finishes on time, within budget, and within scope. You comply with any organizational policies and procedures that the organization has in place regarding project execution to ensure predictable and consistent results. You're going to decide on a system that will allow you to formally sanction work to commence on an activity or deliverable. You're going to motivate your team, you'll praise them, and you'll provide regular status meetings on your project. In the executing process group, you may need to do some earned value analysis. And here you're measuring your project's performance. You're saying, if we're looking at this graph, what did I have planned versus what is actually happening on my project in terms of your schedule, percentage complete. You're doing the same thing for cost. Here's what I had planned, but what is my actual cost for this project? Project managers may also use earned value management. These are specific formulas that you can use to calculate for your project schedule, for your actual cost, and what has been delivered to date in comparison to what your project's budget is. And when you make those calculations, you are going to look at the variance between what you had planned for your schedule versus what actually happened, and what is that difference? And performance indicators allow you, or indexes, allow you to understand from a ratio perspective how far you are from what you have planned. And that's your cost performance index and schedule performance index. Variance management, as I mentioned, is a method of measuring variance and taking corrective action. So now, as a project manager, if you're building a home and you had planned to only spend $3,000 on wood floors for the type of wood that your customer selected, and now you've spent $6,000, that's a variance of negative $3,000. You want to understand what happened there and immediately take corrective actions so that this doesn't continue for the next home that you're building. or maybe then the next room of the home that you're building. And you also want to understand, why did we overspend by $3,000? If we had budgeted $3,000 and now we spent $6,000, what went wrong? Was it that more resources were added? Was it that more equipment needed to be used? Was it that this was special wood that required a very specific tool? What is it? What is your variance? And that's what variance management's all about. It's not just cost, but it's also your schedule and it's also your scope. You can also use forecasting techniques. And this allows a project manager to say, I see what's going on my project. I know we've had some delays, but what is our estimate to complete? ETC. Predicting the future. What is our estimate at completion? What will it take for us to get at the completion of our project? This could mean that your project has some variances and you've accepted those variances. So what does that mean at completion? How much money will we be spending? Variance at completion tells you the difference between what you had planned to complete versus what actually happened, right? You had planned to spend $10,000 on this project and now you've spent $15,000. The variance at completion is $5,000. All of these calculations allow the organization, the program manager, to say, you know what, this project's too expensive. We're just going to stop it right here. And so here are your guidelines for tracking project progress. Again, it's all about your variances, understanding between what you have planned and what actually happened. And so in all of this, you review those variances, you create your project status report, you report on them timely, and you continuously identify your risks. And once risks turn into issues, you implement your risk responses. And so all of that in line with ensuring that your project's a success and that it meets its objectives. And here's what your performance reports could possibly look like. They're generally done in a PowerPoint slide, but it's a matter of just summarizing what's happening on a project so that individuals are aware, especially executives, directors, program managers, of the status of your project. How are things going? So that they can come in and help you if you need help. The types of performance reports that you can have are status reports, progress reports, and forecast reports. Has anyone created any of these kinds of reports? You can put in the chat box of the kinds of reports you create to provide status. Or do you just send emails? As you're going through your project and you're doing all of these calculations, the other thing is also continuously evaluating the performance of your team. Because remember, I told you, without our team, we can't really have a successful project. And so this really involves personal evaluation and tracking the performance of your team members and providing them feedback. And appraising team members, managing and resolving conflicts. You are going to have conflicts on projects. That's inevitable. So getting on top of that conflict as soon as you can and influencing it, it's going to help you resolve it faster. And it also helps identify training needs for your team member, right? You come to find out the reason you had that $3,000 variance in your a hardwood floors activity is because the person who actually did the work, it took them a lot longer than scheduled because they just didn't have the skills to get it done. So they charged more hours. So now you've identified that this team member needs to go back and get training on how to install hardwood floors so that you can reduce your cost on the next activity. And this is also an opportunity for you to recognize the team members that have been doing great work. And this is your guideline on it. Consult your project plan. There's always a reference back to your project plan because you've taken a lot of time to create those. Determine the type of report needed for the information being reported. That's within your communications management plan. Balance your cost and time and schedule and make sure that you're only delivering to your customer what it is that they need, not more and not less. And when you have a change request, first ensure that you have a change request process. And this could mean, how will we submit a change? Who will it be requested by? What is the reason for the change? What's the method of change? Who are the affected parties? How does this change affect our success criteria? Where do we have backup information? How do we get sign-offs on this change? And date of approval. Here's some questions for us to think about. In your experience, what aspects of executing the project plan have you found to be the most challenging and why? If you'd like to share, you can. I'll tell you that in my experience, the most challenging aspect of executing the project plan has been the continuous reinforcement of the objectives of why we're doing what we're doing. The challenge becomes where you're so focused on delivering what your customer needs that as a PM, you sort of reprioritize that your team needs you as much and that they need the continuous reassurance and confirmation of what it is that we need delivered. And not the part of the job that the PM needs to do really well. It's reconnecting and connecting with the team members so they're aligned with what is being delivered. Or else you're going to have disconnected team members, and also the quality of the work would be low and productivity is low when the project manager is disconnected with their team. Second question, what analysis techniques would you use to execute future projects effectively? We learned about many different analysis techniques, and some of them, our approaches to determining requirements, estimating our costs, estimating resources. Those are techniques that we've learned here in this class. I think a better question would be, which one of those would you use for your own projects, right? Because not all projects require massive planning. Some of them are really small. So there's some of those techniques that you might use less of and some that you might use more of. And you just have to determine what that means for your project size, project budget. Do you create an extensive project management plan or just a summary version? It does brainstorming work really well for your project, or do you need another technique to come to solutions or generate ideas? So you have the tools and techniques and the processes available to you. You just, as a PM, have to decide which ones is the best for me to use on my project. Any questions or thoughts here on executing a project? You guys are super quiet. That's okay, right? I promise that I won't overexert you all, but hopefully this is making sense in terms of project management and understanding some of those key terminologies. And if I can help provide clarity on any part of these, just please let me know. The last part is executing the project closeout phase. Now, the idea is that you initiated the project, you planned for it, you executed it, you looked at your variances under monitoring, controlling, and now just closing the project. Oh, Jasmine, you're so great. Right, it's all this very step-by-step process from a waterfall predictive approach. And now that you're closing your project, the idea here is in closeout project, you've already finished the work. There are no deliverables to be delivered here, right? You're just doing some administrative work. So you're going to create a final report. You'll close your project, and what that entails is determining your final project outcomes, reviewing your project files, having your formal acceptance documented, and essentially with me and Kamieta would be, I would, after she gets home from her vacation, did you like everything? Was it good? Could I have done something better for you? And then filing away, her vacation files, capturing the historical information, looking at any vendors I have to pay out, and then creating my final report. Yes, I will give you the slides. And then you close the project. And so this is verifying that verifying and documenting project deliverables, obtaining stakeholder acceptance of the deliverables, identifying reasons if a project is terminated before completion, achieving project information and lessons learned. And then you have your final report. And this is an actual report known as a project final report. That's what you can call it. It has an overview of the project, evaluation of the team's performance, list of issues encountered, a summary of what went right and what went wrong, deviations from the original plan and budget, summary of major accomplishments, and recommendations for future projects. And this final report you're going to give to your management, so they know here's what happened and here's everything you need to know, and let's capture that and file it away. So at the end, make a summary of how the project was carried out. Evaluate the performance of the project team. Explain the issues encountered and provide recommendations for future projects. And I just want to say, as I'm reading this, you might find yourself that you're not a project manager, you're just part of the project team, but it doesn't mean that you can't recommend processes or tools and techniques. Hopefully you have a project manager who's open to listen, but the way you could say it is, hey, what if we created a final report that gave a summary of our project so that other project team members can learn from it? It may be that that's going to be your assignment, right? Because if you're recommending it, they're probably going to get you to do it. The good thing about that is, one, you're going to take what you've learned and actually apply it and use it. Two, you can add that on your resume. And three, it's a skill that you just gained. Four, you just impressed your project manager. So it isn't necessarily, oh, but my project manager won't allow it or my organization doesn't do it. It's how is it that we're introducing a new, this is a change. Most organizations just like doing the way things have been done, but if you see a benefit to it, then present it as a benefit. So here are some questions for you. Final slide of our training. What lessons have you learned from your project? What major issues arose and how were they resolved? Generally, at the end of the project, people have a list of complaints, right? We hear them, but I think if we listened a little better, they're actually lessons that we're looking to learn. And that if we captured them, then other projects can learn from them and avoid it in the future. What are the major accomplishments of your project team? How would you highlight this information in the final report? It's also a good time to really recognize those people that worked hard. And you can put their information in that final report. And at this time in your project, most of your team members have been released. All the work of the project has been done. And in the closing phase, you're just finalizing and reviewing some final reports, paying the people you need to pay, but there's no project deliverables that you're working on. That was done in executing. Closing mostly has to do with just administrative work. And that brings us to the end of our training. What did you guys think? We're like 2 hours early. Any thoughts?
Well, I just really enjoyed it. I found it all to be incredibly helpful. I certainly know that I'll be listening again. It was presented in such a simple way that it was just, it wasn't complicated. So anything that you might have been questioning from the class, for me, there was a lot of clarification.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Good. Good, Tanisha. I'm happy to hear that. I wanted to keep it really simple. I felt like the fundamental slides, it's so hard to just touch the surface without going just a step deeper, especially when it comes to schedule and network diagrams and things like that. But I think what might help, and I'm going to go ahead and put the resources here in the chat, be sure you download it, because that fundamentals book goes further into some of those concepts and breaks it down for you. Where is my classes? Here it is. Let me go ahead and those that are listening, later on, if you reach out to me, I would be more than happy to provide you the resources. All right, so there is the Fundamentals of Project Management book. It's in the chat. Download that. And then also here, let me give you the course slides. So there's that. So if you didn't get those two, I sent those in an email yesterday. You have them now.
So MJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about you said knowing the point of view of a project manager. I think it's very important because as a project manager, it's very important also to listen to the people, the team members, and take in consideration what they are saying. Because I was involved into I wasn't the project manager, but the manager, we came up with this idea of at work to turn like a patient and come up with the nurses working with caregivers and stuff like that. So I tried to explain when we were doing the project itself, that it's going to be very hard to do it based on the fact that the nurses and the caregivers were not people the same role. So I said, this is a risky thing for nurses and things like that. I tried to express as much as I could, but they said, no, we got to go ahead and do it. So, I mean, we didn't take the part, that part in consideration. It turned out that when we were on the floor and tried to really put that in practice, it really did not work. So they just have to stop the project because they said that. We went through for about a week or three, almost a month, find out later that, yeah, this is not going to work because of consequences of, the project. So what I'm saying is that what you said is very important. Yes, it's true that project managers, sometimes we are under the, if it's the manager, I mean, if it's house supervisors above us who are giving us all the hospital policies, things that we have to do, say we are confronting that dilemma. So in that situation, how as a project manager, how can we do that? We try to execute what, whatever comes from upper level. Do we have to go to the upper level to try to explain to them, or how should we do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that scenario, Andre, happens all the time, right? One of my biggest recommendations to project managers, project management team members, is to remove your emotions from this, right? It's nothing personal to you. That's number one thing, because if you get too emotional, then it's a matter of, I don't want to work in here anymore. I'm not valued. No one listens to me. Then it gets into that. And you don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's very easy to go down that rabbit hole. Two, you did your job, Andre, of communicating to your organization to say, if we don't do X, Y, and Z, then the nurses will not be prepared and this project will fail. And that ended up happening, right?
Right.
Now, the one thing that I always say is when you verbalize it, it's good that you verbalize it. But what would be even better is if you then took that and sent an email to say, I just want to follow up to say that I am seeing risks in X, Y, and Z areas, that if we move forward with this part of the project, then we would have nurses or team members who would not be prepared to accept this new software, right? And what you can also do is say, here's a mitigation plan, here's a response plan, here's how we can reduce the risk. Because if you are introducing a risk and you're saying how it's going to impact the project, there's two things that you also have to do. One, either introduce a mitigation plan or how to mitigate it, or say, we need a meeting to really understand how we can mitigate or reduce the impact of this risk.
Okay.
Now, the organization may look at your email and they might ignore it. But that responsibility now falls on them. Because from a professional's perspective, you said what you needed and you followed up with a risk, an email. What could also happen is that now this email, you might get a response from someone else that says, actually, Andre, thank you for bringing that up, because we just spoke about this last week. Here's how we are mitigating this information. So now you might receive some information that you didn't even know. And this risk has actually, the organization has talked about it, but you just weren't involved in it. And that's it. That is all you can do. You can't really do anything else aside from bringing it up as a risk, following it up with an email, and then just allowing those that are in charge to take responsibility of the rest.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But thank you for bringing that up.
Now, the software you were talking about regarding planning, is that some software that are available, will be available to us, or we got to purchase, or how do we do that to put those date timeline and things like that?
It is a tool. It's a pretty expensive one, I have to tell you that. Microsoft doesn't make it easy on us. However, you can get a 30-day free trial. So if you use Windows 11, you can just go to that store, Microsoft Store, and type in MS Project. And you can download a 30-day trial and
Okay,
just play around with it. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thanks, that's nice.
Yeah, so there's MS Project, there's Monday.com, there's Asana, there's Jira. There are brand new project management tools every single second. But I
Okay.
have to say that MS Project is one of the ones that have been around for many years, and the foundation of more of these other tools are really based off of MS Project. So, and the hardest tool to learn is MS Project, but once you understand it, all the other tools are just easy.
Okay. Okay. Now, one more thing. When it comes for like we recently, when I was talking to last time, when I was in how to call that, we are doing a convention
Yeah,
where as a president of a group, we had to put that project. For me, I don't know if you consider as a project when we go there, how to organize it, how to do all those type of things. And at the end, our goal was to make some kind of profit for our nonprofit organization. Can we consider the whole thing as a project, or how would you approach that as somebody who is a leader of a team like this?
so you're saying that you worked on a nonprofit project, but you just played like a small role in it?
Yes, so while I'm the leader, I'm the president of the group. And
Okay.
then we have to organize our convention where we have to go, to another state. We have to spend some money there. So as a president, can I see myself as a project manager to try to make sure, everything will be done based on what we are learning, what I'm learning now?
100%. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
And you absolutely should.
Okay, good.
And that's a good question, because most of us were like, I've never done project management, because sometimes we associate project management with the titles our organization has given us. So this is example that Andre brought up is, even though he doesn't have a traditional title of a project manager or a project analyst, project coordinator, junior PM, those traditional titles, yet he still worked on projects. Organizing a convention is not a joke. So he's had to go through all those process groups. So yes, in that instance, you managed the project.
Okay.
And for anyone else that's thinking about that, if you've worked on a project, you've managed a project. If you have, planned a project, if you've executed on them, if you've worked on projects. Your title could be office manager, but you created processes, you worked on a new software, you implemented a new process. That's all projects. And then it helps you to go back to the definition of what is a project. It has a start date and a finish date.
Correct.
So thank you all for joining. If you enjoyed this class, I just ask if you guys have like 3 seconds, rate this class, because I think what I want to do is I might want to have this be just like a class that I offer once a month, because I think it might be helpful. So I'm thinking if this was helpful to all of you and you want to write a quick review, it might help others make a decision if they should spend their time learning the fundamentals. But that is all. Did everyone capture the 2 documents I shared in the chat? Do you have it now? Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So go ahead and use those to read through it. And for those who are in the PMP class, I'll see you all on Monday. And Andre, I'll see you October 3rd. But if you all need me in the meantime, I'll go ahead and put my email address here, the team email address. Let me know if you have any questions, just email me. But that's it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, the rest of your Saturday. I'm so glad this didn't take more than the time it took. So 10, 1, 3 hours.
So
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jasmine.
thank you very
This is
much.
really
Thank you so
helpful.
much, MJ.
Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
On this Saturday. Thank you.